Hey guys, my name is Jacob Newman, and in September of last year, 2018, my family went through one of the darkest times that we've ever experienced. On September 19th, my brother attempted to commit suicide, and on September 22nd, 3 days later, he was pronounced brain dead in the hospital. And there are a lot of different stories, a lot of different experiences and lessons that come from my brother's suicide. Different stories from me and my fiance, different stories from my parents and I, different stories from my siblings and I. But what I want to talk about is specifically my story, my experience with those 3 days that my brother was in the hospital, and the week from when he was pronounced brain dead to when we had his funeral, and everything that's happened since then. And that's what I want to focus on. But to do that, I have to take you guys back years before this had ever even been something that we would think could happen. In 2017, Daniel started sneaking out and going to parties at night, and when my parents realized it, they actually put in a security system in my house to keep Daniel in the house at night. And of course, he found a way to get around that and kind of still get out. And for a year, there's just tension going back and forth between Daniel and my parents, where he would just absolutely defy everything that they said, and he would absolutely just disregard anything kind of judgment that they were giving towards him, and he would just completely blow them off. Eventually, all of these actions that Daniel was just pushing against my parents led to him actually doing drugs and him continuing to sneak out all the time. And we honestly did not think that there was ever going to be a time where Daniel wasn't like this. We didn't think that he was actually going to be able to get through all of this. But then, by some miracle, he was at a middle school camp that he was having, that our church was having, and God got a hold of him, and he came home and got baptized, and I saw that joy and that gentleness and that kindness restored into him. And for months, Daniel pressed into what God had for him. He leaned in and he completely ran towards God with everything he had. And I finally was able to see my brother come back. I remember so clearly a time when we were at a youth group event. This was when I was an intern, and he ran up to me crying, just absolutely sobbing, ran up to me and hugged me and just said he's so sorry for everything he had done to our family, to me. I remember that so clearly, and we hugged so tight, and that was such an amazing moment. But that amazing did not last for very long. 1 Peter 5:8 says to be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. And Satan was waiting for the perfect moment to bring Daniel back into what he was doing before, and that's exactly what happened. Satan tempted him to bring him back in, to pull him back into exactly all the things that he was doing. And Daniel fell right into it. And we never thought, though, that it would get to the point that it did. I just finished my internship at the church that we go to here, and I was walking out of our student building, walking to my car to actually go eat some lunch with some of the students at our middle school here. And as I was walking out, I looked down at my phone and I saw I had 3 missed calls from my dad. So immediately I picked up the phone and I called him back, and I said, hey, what's up? Like, what's going on? And he said, where are you right now? And I told him, I was about to go to lunch, and he said, you need to go home right now. Your brother's just tried to commit suicide. And in that moment, there's so many things rushed into my mind. I didn't know what to think, and I just stumbled on the words, okay, like I'm going right now, okay, I'm going. And I hung up the phone, ran to my car, got my car, and I just completely stopped. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I just stopped. And I finally started the car, and I started to pull out of the parking lot, and my mentor, Skylar, ran up and just stopped me and was trying to figure out what was happening while I was trying to zoom out of the parking lot so fast. And I told him what was happening. He prayed with me, and we went our separate ways. And then as I was going home, I just started weeping. That's the only word I can use to describe. I just was weeping on the way home, pleading with God and saying, God, please don't take my brother from me. Please just don't take him from me. Take me in his place. Please just don't take him from me. And that lasted all the way until I got to my neighborhood, and I finally realized that I had to prepare myself for what I'm about to see. I don't know what the scene is at my house right now. I don't know if there's going to be fire trucks. I don't know if there's going to be ambulances. I don't know if his dead body is going to be laying there on the ground. I don't know what I'm about to see. So I pulled onto my street, and I see this cop car sitting in the driveway, and so I park on the side of the street, and I look over in the yard, and I see the rope hanging down from the tree. I see the scissors laying on the ground where my mom and my sister had cut him down from the tree. I see the ladder from where he had jumped off to hang himself. And I'm just sitting there crying, not even knowing what to think. I can't build up the courage to get out of my car. Finally, the police starts walking up to my car, and they start to ask, who I am, start to question, why I'm here. And I just explain, I'm his brother, I live here. And she said, okay, but just walk through the garage so you don't contaminate the crime scene. The crime scene that was in my front yard. So I go inside, and I go to the window, and I sit there. I'm just looking out the window at this debris field in my yard, just crying, and in my mind just wanting to yell at God and ask him why he would do all of these things to my family, what we had done to deserve all of this. And I could not get any words out. I couldn't say anything. Because for months and months during my internship, I had been telling students God has a plan for every single thing that happens to you. He has a plan for every single thing and a purpose for everything. So I physically could not say, God, why would you do this to me? So I picked up the phone and I called my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I picked up the phone and I called my fiance, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I just pleading with her, just pouring my heart out and everything that was happening. And she obviously said she's sorry, but there's not much else that she could say. What are you supposed to say to somebody whose brother had just tried to commit suicide? Eventually I had to hang up the phone to talk with the police, and she ended up dropping everything and coming that night to see me. And my sister and her husband dropped everything and came down that night as well. And the next morning we all woke up, and I get a call from Skylar. And Skylar's just specifically telling me, Jacob, you are going to want to be the spiritual leader in your household while your dad's at the hospital. You're going to want to be that, but you need to take time for yourself. You need to not bottle any of this up. You need to pour it all out before God. So that morning, I went to a park much like this. I went to a park and I went up on this little dock that was overlooking this big open marsh, and I looked everywhere. I turned on worship music and just started crying and bawling my eyes out. I've never cried so hard in my life than I did then. And in that moment, I felt God's presence there, and it wasn't like anything I had felt before when I was praying or worshiping. It was so clear to me that God was there, and not being able, I couldn't even say a word. I could not even say a word because I was crying so hard. But the Bible tells us in Romans that the Holy Spirit intercedes on our behalf. And in that moment, I could not only feel God's presence there, I could also feel Daniel's presence there. And as crazy as that sounds, I had never experienced anything like that before. I could so clearly see Daniel and Jesus just standing there in my spirit. I saw Daniel in his orange PNG shirt that he used to wear all the time. And I saw this white figure standing behind him. And in that moment, I knew that I had to say goodbye. That was the moment that God provided for me to say goodbye to my little brother. And somehow pulling the words together to say goodbye, I just poured my heart out. And just as fast after I said goodbye as they appeared, they were gone. And I pulled myself together and I headed back home where everybody was waiting for me. 2 days passed, and my parents called all of me and my siblings to the hospital so we could say our final goodbyes. And when we got there, me and my sister had decided that we didn't want to remember my brother as a dead body in the hospital. We wanted to remember him as the crazy, fun, and exciting kid that he was before he died. So me and my sister stayed back, and one by one, my siblings would go and come back with faces of just pure brokenness, just absolutely weeping as they came back, and days of crying, and friends coming in and out of our house passed, I was sitting in my little sister's room, and I was playing with her, and my mom comes in crying and says, "Your brother was just pronounced brain dead." A week later, we had visitation in his funeral, and my parents had decided at last minute that they were going to have an open casket visitation. And we get there, the family, we all went in there early to see him, and I walked up to the casket and I saw him, and it just looked like he was sleeping. He was just laying there, and I just thought he was just gonna jump up and act crazy and start dancing just like he always did. And he didn't. He didn't. He just laid there. And we went to visitation and the funeral, and it all felt like white noise to me. None of it felt real, that it was happening. I mean, people used to come up to me for even weeks after and say, like, "I'm so sorry for your loss," and just always, to this day, people still talk about my little brother. And they just feel like if they don't bring it up, then they feel this kind of sort of guilt when they talk to me. And that same kind of guilt is what my family felt for weeks after my brother died. We felt this overwhelming guilt and shame and regret of what if we had done this? What if we had done that? What if we had just done something? What if the night before, if I had done something, would it have prevented this? Would my brother still be alive? Would he still be here with me? But all of those were lies from Satan. Every single one of those, they were just lies, and Satan tried so hard to get my family off their game. He tried so hard to choke out our faith, but he had another thing coming. But my family stayed true to God and trusted that he had big plans for Daniel's influence, that his influence would go far beyond what we would ever even be able to comprehend. My family not only laid our guilt, our shame, and our regret down at the foot of the cross, but God restored it with joy and peace, absolutely unexplainable peace. And to this day, I can boldly say that my family is at peace with my brother's suicide. Because God knew way before I was even born that Daniel was going to be a part of our family. God knew that Daniel was going to commit suicide at 15 years old on September 19th. And that's why he put Daniel in our family. Because God knew that the best way, the best chance that Daniel had at truly experiencing God and having a relationship with him and spending eternity with him was in my family. We were Daniel's army that God sent to rescue him. We were Daniel's army, and I'm a part of your army. See, guys, above everything else that I could ever tell you, I want you to know that you matter. That you matter, and you were created for a purpose and with a purpose in mind. That you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You see, my family had to bring everything and had to lean in to what God had for us. We, as a broken family that just lost one of their own, had to bring God the little that we had and watch what he could do with it. That's exactly what you have to do. And guys, look what God has done. Look what he's done in my family. Guys, this time next year, I will be 3 weeks away from getting married to the love of my life. 5 months ago, I accepted a position at the church here that I interned with over a student ministry. I'm 20 years old and leading a student ministry right now. That's just absolutely amazing what God can do when you give him what you have. God is working. What the enemy meant for evil, God has turned into good. And it all started when my family made a decision to lean into God, to lay my brother's suicide at his feet. my life is forever changed because of my brother's suicide. I miss him every single day. There's no doubt about that. I miss him every day. But I know where he is, and I have the hope and the joy that I get to see him again one day. And because of Jesus, because of what Jesus has done for me and my family, I'm going to live every single day for the rest of my life in pursuit of my loving Creator. You know, there have been so many different opportunities and conversations that have come out of my brother's suicide, not only for my family, but also for me, to be able to walk with people through these dark times. And man, if you are still struggling with any kind of thoughts like that or any kind of grief from my brother's suicide, guys, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, to reach out to somebody in my family, because we are here for you guys. Anyone in your community, someone, your friends, a pastor at your local church, just make sure to reach out to somebody in your community, because the best way for you to make it through these dark times is to bring to light the darkness. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to my story.